Hey guys, hello, welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. We're going live here because I had a lot of fun recently going on Jubilee Media and doing one of their, episodes called Surrounded, where they have one person with one point of view surrounded by 25 people of another point of view. And I was the pro-life activist surrounded by 25 pro-abortion or pro-choice activists, depending on the terminology that you want to use. So I thought I'd do a little react here. I think I just ordered some coffee. It's going to be coming soon, and I'm going to drink my coffee and react to how this went. I really enjoyed the opportunity to do this because I have found over now 15 plus years of pro-life activism that it can be really hard to find people on the opposing side who support abortion who are willing to have discussions or debates. It can be really hard. In fact, Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion chain, has an official no debate policy. And I know this because they have actually told media groups over the last decade when I've been on a show that they will not come on the show because I'm on the show. And they don't do debates or discussions with people who disagree. So that's literally Planned Parenthood's official policy, even though they're the biggest abortion chain and they also run this, huge marketing and legislative push to get pro-abortion laws on the books, et cetera. That's their whole gig. They don't want there to be discussions or conversations. So all this to say, when Jubilee invited me on for this, I was extremely happy to do it because I think having conversations about the right to life of the baby, abortion, anything and everything related to this topic is so important. And I think it's so powerful when those conversations happen. So I'm really glad that I got to do this. Was it easy to do? Was it fun to do in the moment? No, I personally don't love going in there and having conflict with people, but I thought it was incredibly important because there's 1 million abortions a year. This is our leading human rights abuse of our day. And I think every single person who cares about life and children should be plugged in on this and caring about abortion and the fact that we have 1 million abortions a year and that it's legal through all 9 months in many states, including my home state of California. So anyways, I'm going to do some live reacting here. Hey guys, for those joining right now, hey Catherine, thanks for joining. Thanks for the kind words. Hey Lucia, thanks for joining. So I will be doing a live react of the Jubilee Surrounded one pro-life activist, that was me, yours truly, versus 25 pro-choice activists. And a little more behind the scenes. So I when I did this, the format, what it looks like, you walk into this big warehouse and it was really cold and there were all these, people sitting there. You don't really get to meet them before the debate. So it's kind of a surprise. They're surprised by who I am. I'm surprised by who they are. And then basically the time starts. I make a claim about what my position on abortion is, such as every unborn child has the right to life. And then the flag goes up. When somebody is debating me and the other people don't like that they're debating me, the flags will go up. If there's enough flags, the person gets kicked off the debate round. So I'll just play a little promo. This was the promo clip they used, so you get a feel for what this looks like, and then we'll go through some of the clips and do a react here. So let me know if you guys can hear the sound here. It does break my heart that if you're sharing you had an abortion, that there could be a child, I don't know how old they'd be, 10 years old today, who would be cheering you on, saying, go get him, mom, you got this.
I can promise you that would not be the case. With your statistic and your information,
your baby had a right to live.
You don't get to speak for my child. You don't get to speak for my child. Let's start right there.
Hey everybody, I'm Lila Rose. I am the president and founder of Live Action. I am a mom of 3, a wife, and the host of the Lila Rose podcast. And today I'm surrounded by 25 pro-choice activists. All right, there it is. So let's start with, one other quick thing I'll let you guys know. For those that are watching the full video right now, and thanks again, hello in the chat. Hey, Logan. Hey, Ann, thanks for joining. Hey, John Henry, thanks again for joining. So just a quick note, what you guys see on the Jubilee YouTube channel of this is obviously what we filmed. There was stuff that is not in there that we filmed. So we filmed another like 10, 15 minutes that they didn't include. I'll talk about that later and why that might be. But also they moved the order around. And I think this is really key to just share on the outset, because when you start watching that Jubilee video, it's like we're right in the middle of it going back and forth. But that was like after an hour or so of the debating, I think maybe half an hour, I don't remember exactly, meaning they didn't start it in the sequencing. And we knew this going in, they were going to mix up the edit so that some things that happened later would happen earlier and vice versa. So just flagging that. But I'm going to start with the exchange that I had with a woman named Jax, which is what they used in the promo video. And we'll take a look at that. So this was the claim every unborn child has a right to life.
Hello. So my first question is, are you familiar with an anime or a manga series called Monster?
I'm not. Tell me about it.
In Monster, essentially you have a doctor, and this doctor has a choice. He has a choice to decide between either saving this young boy's life or saving the life of, I believe it's a sponsor of the hospital. He chooses to save the young boy's life. This young boy grows up to be the titular monster, worse than Hitler. Does that child have a right to life?
Yes, every child has a right to life.
Even if they turn out to be the most monstrous thing you could possibly produce. Even if,
monsters-
even if their life means the life ending of everyone here. Does their life still hold?
I believe
true?
monsters are not born, they're made. So just because a child might eventually do something when they grow up and become an adult doesn't mean we have a right to kill them before that. I don't know what went on in their childhood or the choices that they made, but at the end of the day, everyone has a right to life, especially a child. They're innocent.
Let's say this child grows up and their life is miserable to the point of where they would want to end their life. And that's going to obviously leave some kind of ricochet effect. Everybody's going to be desperately devastated by that. Would you say that the parent who believes that that is where their child's life is going, does that child still deserve the right to life?
Are you saying that if a child is being abused, then we should be in support of killing that child?
Then let me be more specific. What would you say to me as someone who is a third generation suicide survivor?
I want to just do a quick interject here, which is so pause it. I want to hear what she has to say. But this is such a common pro-choice argument, pro-abortion argument, which is that the baby's going to live a terrible life, so it's better off to be aborted. And we hear this all the time. I mean, I have heard this argument thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and this argument completely dies in the face of that person who was the foster care kid, was the adoptee, had a disability, had a tough life at some point in their childhood, and went on to overcome their circumstances. And that doesn't follow that, okay, if you have a hard life, then therefore you don't have a right to live regardless. But the point here is there's something called the power of the human spirit, resiliency, hope. And I think that is what we should be fighting for in the end. We should be fighting for people's right to live so that they can overcome adversity, so that they can go on to overcome whatever difficult challenges they faced in their childhood or in their life. And that's, I think, such a positive view of humanity and human dignity. And this other view, which is that if you have a hard life, you should die or be killed, is so dark. Not only does it violate, I think, human rights, of course, but it's so dark, it's so hopeless. So anyways, but I think this was really personal for Jackson. She's going to share that in a moment, so we'll keep watching.
My mother, my grandmother, and their lives were miserable.
I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm so sorry that that's part of your history and that your mother, your grandmother endured that. And I'm so glad that you're here. I think your life is awesome. And I think every life is awesome.
Now, would you say the same if you knew that I was living in a domestic violence shelter where I consider taking my life frequently? Would you still say that I don't deserve to not only end that life, but especially as somebody who did have an abortion, as somebody who had to make the decision to escape their abuser, their predator, their captor, as someone who was trafficked and pimped? So, would you still say that raising that child under those circumstances would have either made my life difficult, or would you still say that child has a right to life if I made the decision, I don't want to be tied to a predator for the rest of my life. I don't want to be tied to my captor for the rest of my life.
So if someone's dealing with horrible abuse, and I hope that didn't happen to you, but if you were dealing with I'm so sorry. That's absolutely horrible. You deserved much better. You deserve to be taken out of that, rescued from that, and given a better life. And that would be my hope for every person and what I'd want to work towards for every person, as opposed to saying death is the answer, or a suicide is the answer, or abortion is the answer. No. I think choosing life is always better.
Now, what would you say if I were to say,
Yep.
Thank you.
As well.
Appreciate it.
Okay. So that, I think, was our first exchange. And then I think we had another one. Is that true? With Jax, where she talked about it. So maybe pull up the other one. So some of the guests could come up twice and not just the first time. They might get voted out the first time, and then they could try to come up again. And if they make it to the chair first, then they get their opportunity to be, do the debate or whatever. So that was my first conversation with Jax, which was fairly civil. That was my second. I'm sorry. The first conversation with Jax, I think, was more, at least the way that they edited it, they put the one that you just saw, they put that first, right? In the edit, or no? Okay, so I think this is in the edit, the second interaction. Let's put on the first interaction with Jax, and you'll see more of kind of her argument. But what I'm just going to say here is I think what I saw a lot in the Jubilee debate from multiple of the women that I was debating is that a lot of them had what I believe is trauma from past abortions. And they shared that in the debate. They actually would talk about the abortions that they had, and they would get really, really upset, angry, anxious in the debate because they were talking about their abortion. So one of my claims in the debate was that abortion leaves women traumatized, that it's actually traumatic for women. And a lot of people in the debate said, no, not at all. Women are totally fine afterwards. And I did think it was very, heartbreaking and powerful that even the women who got up to debate that claim that abortion is traumatic would get extremely upset, claiming that their abortion did not make them upset ultimately. So let's finish watching the Jax exchange here, the second Jax exchange.
Hi, what's your name?
Jax Prince. Nice to
Jax,
meet you.
nice to meet you. I'm Lila.
So, based off, you've given incredible points, genuinely and truly. I'm learning quite a bit.
Thank you.
So, for the people that you say have the abortion young, how old do I look, out of curiosity?
You're never supposed to answer that,
Dangerous
right?
question.
No, go ahead. By all means.
Will you tell me you'll do me if I do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
deal.
All right, you are 25?
I appreciate that. Add about 10 more years. So,
Okay.
by
You
your
look
logic,
awesome.
thank you.
You look amazing.
By your logic, I should be in that age range of people who abort, let's say, who should be feeling the regret and everything. If I had carried to term, I would be labeled a drug-addicted Black mother, and if I had kept the baby, I would have been labeled a incompetent single mother. So my question for you is, what is your perception of how I should feel about my abortion?
So a couple things. First of all, sometimes the regret happens later in life. It's not within even 5 or 10 years. The trauma they feel might come out later when they have their own other children or grandchildren. So every woman, it's going to be different. Sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it takes years. I mean, I think you're amazing. I think if that's what you've overcome in your life, I think that's incredible. And you should be proud of overcoming so many tough things in your life. It does break my heart that if you're sharing you had an abortion, that there could be a child, I don't know how old they'd be, 10 years old today, who would be cheering you on, saying, go get him, Mom, you got this.
I can promise
And
you that would not be the case, because I can almost promise you that would not be the case, because I say again, I'm in a domestic violence shelter. I've got a dog I can barely take care of. You're you're expecting me to sit here and let you tell me how I'm supposed to feel. You're trying to scare me.
I'm not telling you how to feel.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I'm not telling you how to feel.
With your statistics,
But
and
I
your
am telling you that
information-
your
with
baby,
your statistics
your
and
baby
your
had a right to
information,
live.
with your statistic and your information,
Your baby had a right to live.
you are completely wrong. Because yes,
and I wish someone
yes.
had been helping you more.
Listen,
That's
listen,
the other thing.
listen, but you weren't
deserve
there.
more
That's just
help.
it. Everybody always likes to say, "Oh,
That-
keep the baby, give it up for adoption." I know what our foster care system is like.
but when you-
but
just
you
to be
can't
clear,
tell
when
me
you-
I would have a child cheering me
Just to be
on.
clear,
in
when
this
you place
instance.
a child
You
for
can't-
adoption,
hold on. You're
they
not
don't
going to
go into
speak.
foster
You
care.
don't get to speak for my child. You don't get to speak for my child. Let's start right there. You don't get to speak for my child saying, "Oh, mommy would be cheering you on," or everything like that. You don't fucking know that. You don't know that at all. You don't know what my child would be. I may not even have my child because I was so unfit at the time. Drug addiction, sex work, everything like that. Yes, I'm a proud pro-ho. That is exactly what I do. But you're telling me how my child would feel. And what gives you the right?
I
What
would
gives
hope
you
that
the
for your
right?
child.
What gives you the right?
I would love to respond to you. I think, yes, your child had a right to life. And I would say that I wish there were more people helping you at the time. It sounds like you were at a really rough time in your life. And I think that you mattered, that baby mattered, and you both deserved more help. That's what I would say.
That's what you would say. But you're saying my child be cheering me on
I would
right now.
hope that if you chose to parent.
That's the thing.
If
You just
chose
said
to
you would
parent.
hope.
I would hope
you
that.
would hope. So all of this is going off of hope.
Please return to your seat.
So, I mean, even watching this makes me really sad. I don't know about you guys. I'll take a look at the chat, guys. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer here, but it is sad. It's heartbreaking what Jax went through, and that she chose abortion, and that she's like doubling down here. And you can just see the pain even in the conversation that I'm having with her. So, my heart really goes out to Jax. She tells me, how should I feel? She asked me to tell her how she should feel. I kind of don't take the bait, and I say, well, I would hope that this would be happening if you hadn't had the abortion, because she was basically saying if I hadn't had the abortion. And then she says, don't tell me, how can you tell me what to feel? How can you tell me what to feel? So, can't really win. But again, that's because it's so deeply emotional. It's clearly so deeply painful for her. And I understand why. This is the whole point of my claim in that segment. My claim was that abortion is traumatic to women. And my whole point there was to show how painful abortion is to women, because it's not just like going to the dentist. Abortion's not just like, hanging out and getting some, taking an Advil, or, it's not like getting your appendix out. Abortion is ending the life of a baby, and that has lifelong consequences. So anyways, my heart goes out to Jax, but I'm, again, grateful that people showed up to have the discussions, even if they got so highly emotional, because I think even that has power, and there's fruitfulness that can happen when we actually talk about this stuff. I mentioned a Medicaid study a bunch of times about how women in California who are on Medicaid, so low-income women using state services for healthcare, that the ones that had abortions were 150% more likely to commit suicide than the ones that gave birth and carried to term. So even according to California research and data, it shows that women who have abortions are more likely to have mental troubles afterwards and even become suicidal. So anyways, I hope for those listening and watching, and hey, Lucia, for folks in the chat, hey, Diana, let's pray for people who end up watching the Jubilee debate, let's pray for the people in it, pray for each other. And, because again, there's a lot of trauma that I think people experience, and it's because abortion takes a life. This is not just some medical procedure. This is a human being. This is an entire person with a whole life in front of them. And every abortion, when it takes the life of that human being, it destroys a whole lifetime of possibilities for love, of opportunities, for belonging, for family. It's all destroyed. So anyways, it's very, very heartbreaking there. I'm just going to take a look at the chat here. John Henry says, your 100K subscriber podcast, you had the Sound of Freedom on. Thanks for being an OG, by the way, John Henry. I really appreciate it. We're almost to 200,000 subs on the channel. So thank you, everybody, for watching and supporting the channel. Nicholas says, Lila, you should be slightly more aggressive in your rebuttals, in my opinion. I love your work. It sounds like you're an indirect doctor by saving unborn lives through persuading women. Yes, my goal is to persuade people. That is my job. I want to persuade people. And sometimes I get aggressive, and you'll see that if you watch the whole Jubilee debate. There are points where I do get aggressive. I kind of interject. I try to redirect. And then there are other times where I try to just lay low and, really listen, because in the situation as the exchange with Jax, it's clear she's hurting. It's clear she's damaged by her own abortion. She's not at peace with the abortion that she had. And she was going through, as she said, this terrible time in her life. And so I think it depends on the person and the circumstances, how intense and aggressive to get with the line of questioning or with the answers or with the debate. So that's just my view and how I usually run these debates. And you'll see in the Jubilee debate, there are times where I get aggressive, where I, interject, where I make strong statements. And then there's other times where I think I'm a little more, my tone is a little more low key, because the person is coming in with this emotional intensity. And if I were to match that emotional intensity, I think it would destroy the opportunity for an actual conversation, because we would just be yelling at each other, basically. So anyways, let's go to the next clip. Let's watch another one. Okay, so I think this next one, what are we pulling up next, Harris? Okay, this is a clip with a girl named Julia. And what was the claim with this one? This one was... Okay, so this was one of I think it was my third or fourth claim in the Jubilee debate. Abortion is unconstitutional and should be banned. And then this is a conversation I had with a girl named Julia.
Yes. Okay. So you had mentioned that regardless if it is illegal or not, women are still going to get abortions. So how do you justify the fact
They'll
that
have far less if it's illegal. The abortion rate goes down dramatically when it's illegal.
they're not going to report if they're doing it illegally, because there's going to be repercussions? So
But
why not?
we can prove that live births go up in states where abortion is illegal. That is the fact of what has happened after Dobbs v. Jackson, and some of the trigger laws went into effect, and some states made abortion illegal. So we know more women are having babies. So even with unreported illegal abortions, live births are still going up.
But do you understand
So the law
that
works.
people, when they know that abortion is illegal, or that women have more difficulty receiving abortions, they're going to carry babies to term because they're out of fear of abortions? Why not? Why would you pretty much want to defund places like Planned Parenthood, places that actively help women have safe abortions, and then it further prevents miscarriages in the future? If you allow them safe abortion,
What I
you
pause
really
really
wanna work
quick.
against
Sorry.
it.
I'm sorry to pause this. Micah in the chat, he says, bye, I'm too pro-choice to be here. Come back, Micah. I'm happy. Seriously, I want to hear, in the chat, if you're pro-choice, I want to hear from you guys. That's the whole reason I did this whole Jubilee thing. So anyways, don't leave, Micah, but we'll keep listening to this exchange.
Some of the work I'm trying to do now is work against this narrative that gives women so much fear about children. We are told to fear pregnancy, we're told to fear birth, we're told to fear being mothers, and our society also tells us to celebrate abortion. And I think that's a very anti-woman view. And I think we should flip the script on that and instead say, actually, our superpower as women is the ability to bring life into the world and nurture life. Men can't do that.
Our superpower of women is the power to choose. That's feminism. The power of choice. If you want to be a mother or you don't want to be a mother, that's feminism. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, you want to go to work.
But the difference, my friend, is this: when you're pregnant, you're already a mother, and we can't deny the scientific reality of that human life. That is a human life, a child, a son or a daughter that has rights too.
If you force women to have pregnancies and you force women to basically change their entire life, we're not forcing the men to do that.
Well, I think we should force the men to do that. Quite frankly.
Great. Well, have you met a man? You think they're going to do that? They're not going to do that. They're really not.
But what you're getting at, which I think is a really good point, is that we have this sort of approach in our society when it comes to sex and relationships where men and women, and a lot of times men, I don't want to just say men do this, women do this too,
all genders,
where we treat this very maybe casually. We have this all backwards. Instead of looking at sex and relationships as something really beautiful, something you commit to for life, you sacrifice for the other person, you love that other person, right. And then if you conceive a baby, you love that baby, you fight for that baby. I think that is the view we should be moving towards as a society, instead of sex being casual. If you get pregnant, just have an abortion. The man abandons the woman.
Which is a very heterosexual view, because we're not including queer sex in this narrative, in which sometimes sex is
well, if the queer sex brings life into the world, either way, I think at the end of the day, we're still talking about human life.
That's great, but often, but in this regards, in this argument, we're not giving people sexual education. If you go into Planned Parenthood, they not only give abortions, they also provide STD testing. They allow men into Planned Parenthood, people without health insurance. If we're talking about healthcare as a right,
time's up.
Yeah, it's so much to unpack here, and like also, I want to pay attention to the chat. Just a couple thoughts on this one. It's so interesting because like this is I think one of the biggest disagreements between a pro-life position and a pro-abortion position. It's like, what is a woman's superpower? And I said the superpower of a woman is that she has the ability to bring life into the world. Men can't do that, only women can. That is the difference, the sexual difference between men and women. Women can be mothers, men can be fathers, and not vice versa. So she says, Julia, in response, she says, no, the superpower of a woman is the power to choose whether or not to bring a life into the world. And to some degree, she's correct in the sense that, yes, you can choose as a woman to, get married, you can choose to have sex and get pregnant, you can choose to not, you can choose to abstain and, become a nun or just not have sex at all and be an abstinent person and not do that, not bring life into the world. But when you have sex and you conceive a baby, you've brought life into the world. There's already life into the world. And that is a superpower. And then the question is, and the pro-abortion argument is, well, I have the right now to kill this life. And the pro-life position is, no, you don't have the right to kill your child. Just because you bring them into the world and you don't want them in the world anymore, you don't have the right to take them out of the world. So that is the key difference here. And, in all the debate during this Jubilee discussion, I don't think that difference was ever really, this format is tough, right? Because literally people get voted off. We only have like a few minutes with people. You have to get, have this discussion. So I think that was not as fully fleshed out as maybe it could have been in a longer form debate. I will be doing a debate at Georgetown University next week with a pro-abortion professor over like an hour and a half. So I do the long form debates, but this one, again, hard to go very deep in such a short time frame. It was kind of crazy how she said the thing about queer sex. Well, what about queer sex? And I was like, well, if queer sex, she's like, you're just talking about heterosexuals. And I said, well, regardless, we're talking about bringing life into the world. So sex that brings life into the world. That's sex between a man and a woman. That is sex that can bring life into the world. So if you want to dismiss that as just heterosexual sex, you can do what you would like. But the reality is that is the sex that can bring life into the world. That's why we're even talking about this. Okay, I'm going to take a quick look at the chat here. The chat's going. All right, Micah, I mentioned Micah earlier. Micah says, is pro-life mostly a Christian thing? No, it's not. You do not have to be Christian to be pro-life. In fact, I know a ton of pro-lifers who are atheists, pro-lifers who are, agnostics, pro-lifers who are Jewish, pro-lifers who are Muslim, pro-lifers who are different, Latter-day Saints. There's a lot of different people who are pro-life from different diverse backgrounds, and worldviews. Now, every single person who is a Christian, who identifies as Christian, who says they're Christian, Catholic, they should 100% be pro-life, because very fundamental to Christian teaching is that we are made in the image of God, and that thou shalt not kill. You don't kill somebody who's inconvenient to you, especially if you're their parent. So that is a fundamental Christian belief as well, but it's also a human rights doctrine that supersedes the Christian religion. It's really for anybody who believes in the idea of a human rights, that all humans have human rights, and the first right is the right to life. So you can be any religion and be pro-life, or no religion if you prefer. I encourage everyone, though, to check out Christianity. As you guys know, I'm a Catholic. I'm a passionate one, but that does not have to, again, you can be pro-life without being of that religion. Okay. Diana says, hi, Lila. I'm a 16-year-old pro-life Catholic girl watching from England. Just wanted to ask your opinion on what the government, our church, should do with women who have received abortions. I actually talked about this in the Jubilee debate, and here's my position on that. I think if there's a law to make abortion illegal today, which is what we're working towards, we want children to be protected from abortion. We want them to have protections. And anyone who's had an abortion in the past, I don't think laws should be retroactive to punish people who've had abortions in the past. I think that we should actually criminalize the providing of abortions, whether that's from a doctor or a clinic selling abortion pills. And I think, yes, if someone goes into an abortion, like think about that. If they're going to go and, let's say their baby's 5 months old, they're going to go and kill their 5-month-old baby, and they know it's a baby. They're not being coerced into doing it. They have full knowledge of what they're doing. And by the way, our legal system has a lot of existing law that determines whether somebody is going into an act of homicide with full knowledge, full consent, without coercion. Yeah, I think there should be accountability for that. I don't think we should just say, oh, you try to kill your 7-month baby in utero and you get off scot-free. There's no penalization. There's nothing for it whatsoever. Today, if somebody kills their newborn baby, they can face criminal penalties. And I think that's a healthy thing, because it shows that we protect human life. So I think we should be protecting human life, not just as soon as the baby's born, but before the baby is born too. All right, I think we're going to watch another. Micah says, I'm a nihilist, so our views are very different. Will probably be very different. Yes, I think so. Because nihilism, that view of the world is, I think, very opposite to my view as a Christian, which I believe that God is in command of history, human history, and that there is a future for humanity, which is meant to be eternity with him, total loving communion in heaven, if we're willing to accept God into our life, and particularly his son, Jesus Christ. So yeah, I do think those are opposite worldviews. Okay, let's do another one. Dr. Phil. Oh yeah. So there was a girl, guys, on the Jubilee show that I did, and she was the same woman from when I did the Dr. Phil show a couple years ago. So that was kind of crazy, because I was meeting everyone. And again, you don't get to meet people when you walk in. You just sit down, and then the flags go up, the timer starts, all this fun stuff. But this girl gets out there and oh my goodness, I've met you before, Ceci. And she was the girl on Dr. Phil who was really angry about, again, I was presenting the pro-life position on Dr. Phil a couple years ago. She got up and she was just really yelling at me, very upset about what I was saying. And she showed up again at the Jubilee debate. So anyways, we'll watch that interaction next.
Hi.
Hi,
I'm
Lila.
Ceci.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So your claim is that there's no right for abortion under any circumstance at all, which obviously I disagree with, because
And I'll just define abortion really quick, just for clarity, because it was
you don't really need to for me.
the intentional killing of a living.
Whatever you want to call it, I
Unborn
don't
baby.
disagree with it. Anyway, so my point though is that there should be exception. I mean, I think you should be able to get it if you want one, but
Under any
for
circumstances?
the 10-year-olds that are raped, which that 10-year-old in Ohio who was raped by her father, then was told she couldn't have an abortion, had to go to a different state. So you're more than comfortable with holding down a 10-year-old once again to make her do something with her body she doesn't want to do.
So an abortion is another act of violence in my view, both of that baby and of a rape survivor. I think this view that we have that abortion is somehow going to heal
Even
a
if
rape
that
survivor
10-year-old is crying and begging you, I don't want to give birth. I don't want to carry it for 9 months. I don't want to be a
I think
mom.
she deserves the best support and care. She needs to be taken out
And the
of that
best support
abusive
and care would be
situation.
health care, and in this case
Healthcare.
would be an abortion.
But we can't take the
I mean,
life
we're
of an
not
innocent
just
child.
talking.
I think in
But
that case,
you
in
are
that case, an
putting
early
empathy-
delivery.
but
If I can just finish.
No, you're affording more empathy toward a zygote more than you are a living, breathing 10-year-old who just went through something seriously traumatizing.
So
Your empathy is in a place I don't understand.
if I can respond.
Now you can, absolutely.
So is absolutely horrific. Incest is absolutely horrific. We are completely aligned on that. We need more penalties for abusers. I think one of the things that I have about that case that I've seen is there's no story about what happened to her abuser. Was she protected from her abuser? It's like that's left out of the
It was her
narrative.
father.
I mean, but what
I've heard you say before,
has she
though,
been
you
protected?
shouldn't punish a child for what you called generational sin.
But if I can finish.
But which child are you not? Which
you gotta
child
let me.
do
You
wanna
gotta let me
punish,
make the case.
is my
You gotta let me
question.
make the case. You gotta
well,
let me.
You're worried about punishing a child, but which one? The 10-year-old who was already punished?
Can I respond?
Now you can.
In a case of incest and there's a new life that's been conceived, there's another human being now we're talking about. It's not just the abuser and the victim. There's another potential victim.
There's a zygote,
And we
right.
need to care for both. They're both human beings. And in
They're
the
not
case
yet.
of a very young girl who's been the victim of a horrific assault, the idea—
You wanna hold her down again.
The idea, well, in an abortion, you're literally held down and you have to submit your body to an act that will
That
deliver
she would
a
want
forced
to have
child.
done
Well, you're
rather
speaking
than the
for her.
other.
You're speaking for her right now.
No. We're talking
But-
about the 10-year-old who
but let-
wanted to get that abortion.
But the point here is that there are human rights now in play for an unborn child and a born child. They both have rights. And I think the medical care is very key, as well as the counseling and the support that she deserves. And probably an early delivery would be what would be necessary to protect her health and to make sure that the baby would have a chance to live. But at the end of the day, you don't give the death penalty to the baby because they were conceived by a rapist, because their father is an abuser. We don't even give the death penalty in this country to rapists. Were you aware of that?
My question for
You
yeah,
can't
I
even
am
get the
aware
death
of
penalty
that.
for. Why would we be okay with giving the death penalty to a
That's
child
not-
because they're
it's not a
conceived in
child.
rape?
It's not a child.
What are they
It's
in
a
your view?
zygote. It's
What
an
is
embryo.
what
it's
is
a
an
fetus.
embryo? What is
and
an
I'm not
embryo?
going to get into the science behind it because the thing
You don't think
now
the science
is
matters?
Not in this argument right
So
now.
you don't
because
think-
you think there's no right for an abortion for any reason,
But that's
there
because the
definitely
science-
are.
that's because-
like
if I
Nancy
can just
Davis in
respond.
Louisiana,
If I can just
who
respond.
her child is going to be born with a crania, meaning without a skull. You thought, and you said this to her, you said, I think your child should have died in the loving arms of their parents instead of at the tools of the abortionist. Now, this woman was going to give birth to a child that will die within minutes of being born. So you're not bringing life into the world.
Do you know what
So
abortion
why
procedure
would
would
you
have been
say
done on
something
her
like
baby?
that?
Do you know what abortion procedure would have been done on her baby in a later term abortion that she had in the second
An
trimester?
emergency
if
abortion?
if I can just complete my sentence here, either there would have been a lethal injection of that baby to kill that baby, or that would have been a live dismemberment of that baby. Those are the abortion procedures used in the second or the third trimester.
And you don't think either
And-
one should
but,
have been
But you
used?
support that? Do you support that? Thank you.
Okay, so we had a similar exchange on Dr. Phil about this idea of empathy. She was saying, you're not empathetic, you're not empathetic. I think empathy can absolutely be weaponized to do horrible things if you say it's actually loving to kill somebody, right? That's the argument of abortion. It's actually loving to abort the baby. It's actually loving in some assisted suicide cases. They say, well, it's loving to the person to commit suicide because they're in pain, or it's loving to do this thing because of this suffering, X, Y, or Z suffering. And the reality is, like, we should work to eliminate suffering, eliminate pain, but not eliminate the person who is suffering, or eliminate a person that we claim is causing pain, which in this case would be the baby. We don't eliminate human beings. We try to eliminate the bad circumstances. And I think one of the things that Ceci keeps bringing up is rape and these really horrific cases. And one of the things that I said, I think at some point in the Jubilee, not in this exchange, but well over 90% of abortions, there's 1 million a year, are not because of rape or incest or life or health of the mother or any kind of disability even. They're elective abortions. They're purely done for convenience. So we're talking about 1 million abortions, and hundreds of thousands of them, over 900,000 of them, are done for elective, purely elective reasons. And yet you don't see the argument from the pro-choice person as saying, yeah, we'll get rid of those abortions. I just want abortions legal in a few cases. The argument instead is there should be no limitations or no restrictions on abortion. So that's one point that I think is important. But, you guys have heard me talk about this many times. And the reality is, the most horrific, heinous situation, rape, incest of a young girl who's just totally abused. It's horrific. Like, let's all agree. It is horrific. I will never shy away from 1,000% agreeing with Ceci or whoever else that it is horrific. So then what do? You've got a baby pregnant. You've got a child pregnant with a baby. You've got a rapist. Okay, get the rapist out of there. Put him in jail. A lot of the times that doesn't even happen. There's not even accountability, right? Deal with that, okay? Get the girl in a position of safety. Get her counseling. Get her good medical care. And then instead of giving her an abortion, which is going to, by the way, can cause trauma and can be physically harmful to her, give her the best medical care and make sure that her and that baby are safe. And then give her the counseling and the therapy that she deserves. Don't just say, oh, we're going to somehow heal you or help you by giving you an abortion. Abortion is not going to heal or help her. I think that's one of the biggest lies happening in the media today, that abortion is going to help rape victims. It is such a huge lie that is being pushed constantly. Abortion does not help rape victims. It does not take away the memory of the rape. Abortion only adds more trauma. And we know this based on the research that is out there of women who experience trauma. I think you can even see that by watching this Jubilee video on the women who've had abortions coming up. And sometimes there's a sense of trauma. They call it trauma dumping. There's trauma in this because we're dealing with a human life, a baby. There's a woman that I work with named Liana, who is amazing. She was raped at age 12, gang raped. And she was extremely suicidal, extremely wounded by this horrible violence, finds out she's pregnant. The doctor says, well, let me do the abortion on you. And she says, will the abortion take away my self-loathing, my feeling of trauma, my pain from the rape? And the doctor was actually honest with her and said, well, no, but it will take away your pregnancy. You won't be pregnant anymore. And she said, well, why would I do that to this baby, have this abortion, if it's not even going to heal me from my rape? And she went on to give birth to this baby. And she actually says the process of this new baby coming to this world, this innocent new baby who was not the rapist, they are innocent, right? The baby didn't do the crime, the father did. That actually was part of her healing journey. So anyways, we tell her story a lot. There's a lot of other stories like hers, but those stories need to be told. The media usually doesn't report on those stories because a lot of groups in the media are pro-abortion. All right, I'm going to go back to the chat here before we keep going. Lucia's asking how I stay calm. I mean, I try to stay calm. I do think sometimes I get passionate, but overall I try to stay calm because I do think, facts and logic are on our side. The reason is on our side. Justice is on our side. Love is on our side. And I also know that the people sitting across from me often are hurting. And so that gives me a sense of calm because I do feel love, and I do love the person sitting across from me, and I want them to see this bigger picture of the value of life, their life, a baby's life, and not ever think that resorting to killing a baby is going to fix their problems or solve anyone's problems. So I think that gives me some of my confidence, and I believe I'm going in there with a mindset of love. A couple more comments here, and I'll keep watching here. Bald Eagle Screech says, your kindness is what allowed me to keep watching your videos when I was pro-choice. You had such an influence on me, and I'm happily pro-life and Christian now. Thank you for all you do. That means a lot to me. It kind of makes me a little emotional here. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for listening. I thank you for listening. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage for people of an opposing view to listen to the other side. And I do credit, there were a lot of interruptions, a lot of debate from those 25 activists, but I do really credit them for showing up and having the conversation. And I really thank you from this comment. Thank you for sharing this, and thank you for listening. It means the world to me. All right, let's listen to another segment here from the Jubilee debate. Let's do maybe Dana. There's so many. I think there were like 20. Well, there were 25. I think of the 25, we debated like 20 of them. Not everyone, I think, debated actually. But sure, we can do, the closing one. Or actually, let's do, was it Emily or Julia? Let's do Julia. Did we do Julia yet? Yes, we did Julia? Okay. Dana? Okay. We're just pulling up another clip here for you guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in here. We're talking about the Jubilee debate, as you can see. All right. So yeah, this was a special segment. So what I'm going to share, we're going to watch here next was so there were 4 claims that were made in the Jubilee debate. And at the end, one person was chosen. I got to pick one person to make their claim, and then I would debate them for 10 minutes. So I want to show that clip. And the reason, this is probably my favorite part of the whole experience, because we actually got to talk for 10 minutes without the flags going up. And this lady named Dana, I had talked to her earlier, and she kind of just shared her story with me. I didn't really talk, get much of words in edgewise. That's okay, because she was just sharing her story. That's fine. I wanted to have a longer conversation with her, so I chose her as the person. And then this is our conversation that we had at the end.
I chose Dana because I didn't feel like we actually got to have the conversation. I got to hear from Dana about some of your position and why you believe what you believe. I didn't really feel like we got to dialogue about that a lot, so I'd love to do that more. And I'd also love to hear what your claim would be that you want to talk about as well.
So my claim is that my bodily autonomy is the prevailing right in this debate.
Thank you. And I feel like that's something that's come back up again and again in the conversation as a through theme that we're having. So I hear what you're saying. I agree that we have bodily autonomy. I have the right to not someone to come and hit me, hurt me, etc. But there's a very unique relationship when a woman is pregnant with another human life, with another body, and that's her son or her daughter. Whether she wanted to get pregnant, intended to get pregnant, when she's pregnant, there's that unique relationship that springs into existence with the existence of that new human life. And a few times it's been said today, well, the science doesn't matter. We're just having my opinion, my personal story. The science does matter a lot, because science can help tell us what is real and what is not real. And science does tell us when human life begins, and it doesn't magically begin at birth.
Human life
begins
this
before
happened
birth.
so many times, guys. It was at least 3 times in the Jubilee debate when some of the folks said science doesn't matter, or they didn't care what the science said. And that was really interesting to me. And they would say, well, it doesn't matter because it's not my argument. I'm not arguing from science, they would say. And it was kind of interesting. It's like what it said to me is, they will use science. Like, those who support abortion will maybe use science if it somehow supports their claims. But if the science directly refutes their claim, and their claim is like, it's not a baby, it's not a human life, then they don't care that the science refutes their claim. They really do not care. They're fine being anti-scientific. And I thought that was really interesting and telling. So anyways, you can keep watching.
Life begins at the moment of fertilization. And so, well, I'm all for bodily autonomy. I believe that our bodily autonomy as women ends where another human being's life begins. And when I'm pregnant, there's another body inside my body, and they deserve the right to live. And yes, that's going to mean maybe a few months of me trying to hopefully take care of my body because it's feeding that body, and then delivering that child. And if I feel I can't parent, then there's other options. But I still have a responsibility not to kill that child via an abortion.
So I'm going to tell you a story. So I am a mother. I have a 22-year-old son.
Amazing.
Who has autism. And I became pregnant when he was around 6 years old. And I didn't want to have that child. And so I had an abortion. And I had the abortion when I was about 6 weeks along, because it wasn't a child. It was a mass of cells. And I made that decision very distinctly. I didn't have any regrets about that decision. I actually didn't have a lot of debate about that decision. I had a child where I lived in an estate where we didn't have an insurance mandate. So I was working really hard to get my son the help that he needed with his autism. And I did not want to be pregnant. I was in a relationship. We made a choice because that was the choice that I made for the mass of cells that was in my body.
I totally hear what you're saying.
And I need you to understand that it wasn't about what am I killing, what am I keeping alive. It was what was best for my body, because I then would have had to carry that child to term. And I also want you to know that when I had my child, I am a Black woman in this world. And my birth was actually very dangerous, as was many of the women in my family, because Black women don't get the same type of health care that you receive.
I'd love to respond to what you're saying. Okay. I think it's absolutely horrible that women, because of the color of their skin, are not getting good health care. I think that's ridiculous and horrible. So we are aligned on that. when you talk about your baby and you saw that baby as a clump of cells, you said it wasn't a baby to you, it wasn't a child, and you had that abortion, you have no regrets. Our feelings or our beliefs about other people don't change that other person, that other human's value. So I could have feelings or beliefs about my son, about a person I walk past down the street, about anybody in this room, but that doesn't change whether they're good feelings, bad feelings, good beliefs, bad beliefs. That doesn't change that person's innate human value.
This is actually, we can just pause it because I'm the one talking. I'll just talk now. But I think this is such a fundamental point about the pro-life position that is just logical. It's reality. It's that, my feelings, my opinions about somebody else doesn't change reality. But this is really the clash of worldviews, right? Because there's a whole worldview today that says, I decide what reality is. Like, my feelings are truth. And yes, your feelings can tell you something about the truth. Like, they can tell you that you feel really bad about a situation, or you're really mad at a person, or you're really upset about something. That is true. But just because you're really mad at somebody else, or really frustrated or inconvenienced by someone else, doesn't make it then okay or true for you to go and kill that other person, right? So there's this kind of tyranny of feelings today where feelings matter. We got to listen to our feelings. I think we got to know what we feel, be self-aware, but our feelings should not dictate our actions. Because if our feelings just dictate our actions, like we feel really angry about something and therefore we want to go kick the wall, or we want to go punch someone in the face, or God forbid, we're really angry about being pregnant, or really upset or anxious about being pregnant, so we want to go get an abortion and kill the baby, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, or the thing that's going to help us in the long run. That's the thing. Bad choices have bad consequences. And that was a big part of this whole Jubilee conversation, is talking about the trauma that nobody talks about, the mental health risk, the suicidality that happens with many people who have abortions, alongside the death of that baby, of course. So that's not to say that if you kill someone and you have no repercussions afterwards mentally, it's okay to then kill the person. But usually when you do something that's bad, that's harmful to someone else, it often harms you too. That's usually the natural consequences of our actions, have to do with the harm that the thing does to us as well as someone else. Now, in a civil society, you want natural consequences for bad actions to prevent people from doing the bad actions, right? That's why we need legal protections for babies. That's why we need to not have abortion clinics just be open in all of our cities and our towns. This should be something that is seen as the bad thing that it is, and then we need the support systems that women deserve. And the beautiful thing is we have many of these support systems. There are literally thousands of pregnancy resource centers. There are literally millions of families wanting to adopt. Those things exist. Many people don't maybe realize they exist, but they do exist. So we need to obviously talk about that more too. But I just think that's such an important point. Our feelings do not determine reality. They just don't, especially the value of someone else's life. If I have bad feelings about your life, that doesn't mean your life isn't good. It doesn't mean your life doesn't deserve protection. So anyways, we can keep listening to this one.
Value. And they have innate human value, not because of their capacities, not because of their abilities, but because of their innate human nature that we all share. And human nature doesn't start at birth, doesn't start a few weeks or even a month before birth. It starts at the beginning of a human person's life, which is fertilization.
But that's your opinion. So there isn't actually scientific evidence that states that human life begins at conception.
There is a tremendous amount of scientific evidence that shows that. If you open any human biology textbook, you're going to find that the development process begins with fertilization of the human life.
What it says is that,
and also if you're an in vitro fertilization clinic,
what it says
if you're a technician,
is that there is cell multiplication.
But it's not just any cell multiplication, because you're made of cells, right? I'm made of cells.
Well, sure.
Right? Okay. You and I are clumps of cells, right?
100%.
But we're unique clumps of cells. We're individual clumps of cells that constitute a whole human. And at the moment of fertilization, you know what you got? You got a whole human. They're very small, but you have a whole human that just needs, you have a whole human at the moment of fertilization that just needs time and nourishment to grow, but has a unique genetic distinction.
But it doesn't always go that way. So for example,
you could miscarry, yes.
Yeah. So
but
when
that's still a loss of the, that's still a human being.
But when I had my miscarriage,
I'm so sorry.
I had a clump of cells that then grew and then did not grow into a human child.
I have a question for you. You said you have a son. How old is he now?
22. He's 20. Oh my goodness.
You look great, by the way. I have a question. I'm just curious, because you're talking about the baby you miscarried, the baby you had the abortion of, and you called them clumps of cells. Did you see your son when he was unborn as a clump of cell, or did you consider him in your mind as a son, as a
I
human?
didn't consider him a clump of cells.
You did or you didn't?
I did, absolutely. Absolutely.
So for you didn't really feel connected to even him until he was born.
So I knew that until he was actually out of my body, that there was not necessarily a live birth that was going to happen.
So were you
because
kind of-
I lost a child,
I see.
and I understood that having a pregnancy does not mean that you have a live birth and a baby at the end.
That
of
is
it.
Okay, can
absolutely
you pause it? This was what was running through my mind. I couldn't like say this to Dana during the debate, but this was running through my mind is that she was protecting herself. It sounds from what she's saying, she lost a son, miscarriage, it sounded like. I think it was a son. She had a son and then she aborted another child. So she had a miscarriage, a born child, and then an aborted child. And she was saying that she didn't consider her born child a child until he was born. And that was because he wasn't born yet and she might lose him. I mean, again, this is kind of the implication of what she's saying. Now, again, I don't know her heart. I can't speak for her, but what she was saying, it sounded to me like she was protecting herself from seeing the humanity of her unborn children, for all of them when they were unborn, because it was too painful the thought of losing the one that she ended up carrying to term. Of course, that doesn't follow then why she would have the abortion, because in that case, she said she didn't want to. She just didn't want to put her body through that. So she'll talk about that. But I did think that that was very powerful. It wasn't just her view of the baby that she aborted. It was her view of her own child, that she didn't see him as a human until he was born. So we can hear a little more from Dana here. You keep playing it.
And so for me, that choice about what is happening to my body, that
Were you
choice,
sad after the miscarriage? I'm just curious. Or were you kind of felt fine afterwards? Because I had a miscarriage too. I felt deeply sad by it.
So
Women feel differently.
I was ambivalent. Okay. I was not ready to have a child, and I was going through a divorce at the time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it sucked.
It sucks,
But
yeah.
also,
So
it was okay because I was not ready to be at that point, and I didn't even make that decision. My body made that decision for me.
I hear everything you're saying, but here's the reality. You're strong. You are the one, when you're pregnant, if I get pregnant, I've been pregnant now 4 times. I'm more powerful than that baby, right? Because I have the power to talk, walk, do whatever I'm going to do. And that baby is completely dependent on me, right? Mm-hmm. And even when there's a newborn, totally dependent on everybody around them, if not their biological mother, whoever's they're handed off to, right? It's incredibly important for a rule of law, for justice, for human rights, that we are especially careful to protect the rights of those that are dependent and weak. Because if we live in a society that just says the strong get to choose what they want because they can, that's not a just or a loving society. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so pro-life. I'm so pro-life because that baby, you're right, they're totally dependent on the mother.
Absolutely.
They're completely unable to defend themselves, speak for themselves. And that's all the more reason why we as a civil and just society should care about their right to live and, by the way, help that mother. It goes 2 and 2, right? Because you can't just care for the baby and not care for the mother. You got to care for them both.
And when that is a viable life outside of my body, 100%.
Well, we should care at the beginning of human development. That's my position.
Yep, and human development.
And women who are pregnant need extra care too. It's not like you just get care when the baby's born. You should get extra care before.
Yes, they do.
Because you're carrying a new life.
While that is still in my body, this is my body. And that is my choice about what happens to the things that are in my body. That is the choice.
Here's a question for you. Your womb. What is the womb designed for? A woman's uterus. What's it designed for?
It is designed to carry a clump of cells to eventually,
Not a baby. Definitely not a baby.
A fetus.
And how did you start your life before birth? Where were you?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Come on, you know. Where were you before you were born?
I was in my mother's egg sac.
Okay, you were in your mother's egg sac. You mean you were in her uterus, right?
No, I was in my mother's egg sac, in her actual.
Well, that
egg
wasn't
sac.
you yet. An egg is not you.
The egg was a part of me, and then the other part of me was in my dad's, I guess, testicles.
So
I mean, truly.
It wasn't you yet, because you is when there's a whole human, right? And a unique
Yes.
individual
So when I was
genetic
born,
identity.
then yes, then
Well,
then was me.
But the science shows, come on, the science shows at the moment of fertilization, sperm egg fusion,
The
you have
science
unique,
doesn't
that's
actually
when
show that.
it does show that you have unique individual
the
genetic
science
identity
shows-
that's distinct from your
The
parents.
science shows that when an egg is
That is a
fertilized,
fact.
that there is cell multiplication.
But
that does
what
not
kind of
show,
cell multiplication? It's not like skin cells.
Well,
It's not
sure,
skin cells. What is
sure.
it?
It becomes skin cells.
Well, it
is
develops
cell-
its skin eventually.
Well, sure.
But what is it? What is it? Come on. What is it?
It's a mass of cells.
But what is it? It's a human embryo, right?
Well, yes.
That's developing
But
rapidly.
it is a clump of
But
cells.
we already said we are clumps of cells. So you're kind of using that pejoratively, like, oh, you're a clump of cells. You can be aborted. You can be miscarried. It doesn't matter. Who cares? You and I are clumps of cells. So it's a
not
little
clump- but it's not
dehumanizing. You're being a little
well,
dehumanizing.
Yes,
here.
I am being dehumanizing
Why?
because it is a
Why?
clump of cells.
But we are clumps of cells. We already you acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So you're
Because
not wanting to
until-
dehumanize
because
us, right?
until-
Why wouldn't you dehumanize us
because
with that term?
until
But you
are
dehumanize the baby.
actually outside of my body, there are no rights.
It's like
because
short
if
circuits.
there were, my friends,
It short circuits.
But
Like
I keep asking.
see, the thing is, it's so you can pause it. It's so crazy. It's like she's admitting. I mean, it took me a while to get her to admit it using the Socratic method, but we got her there. She admitted that yes, it is a human embryo. It's a whole human. It's not just like skin cells. It's a clump of cells, yes, but it's also an embryo. She admits, well, yeah, I'm a clump of cells. You're a clump of cells. So like and then she admitted, I am dehumanizing them. Like she literally said she was dehumanizing them. And then she goes just like, again, short circuit, just goes right back to the argument of, well, it's not outside of my body. It's not outside of my body. And, we talked about that multiple times in the Jubilee discussion. It's like, yes, the baby's not outside of your body. The baby is dependent on your body, but so is the newborn baby. So is the 2-year-old. If you leave a 2-year-old alone for any given amount of time, the 2-year-old will die. If you leave the newborn alone, the newborn will absolutely die. They're dependent on other people's bodies. And that's the way that humans develop. We are dependent on each other. Interdependence is a good thing. Dependence is a beautiful thing because it's how we come into existence. And we've just completely gone, like in the last 30, 40 years since Roe v. Wade, 50 years since Roe v. Wade, there has been this like brain break that has happened where people's brains are literally broken, where we think, well, if baby is dependent, therefore baby can be killed. Baby can die. Baby can die. But then we don't apply that logic to the newborn baby that is also dependent, completely dependent on adults, dependent on a man maybe or a woman, whoever is caring for that child, completely dependent. Well, that man, that woman who's caring for that newborn has to use their body to care for that baby. They have to hold that baby, feed that baby, wash that baby, change that baby. They are forced, you could say, to use their body. We have to use our bodies to care for children. Yes. And when they're unborn in a special way, there's that very special relationship of care that's even more intimate that doesn't give anyone the right to kill a baby or to stop caring for the baby by ejecting. And I would even argue that you have to kind of go above and beyond with an abortion in the act of killing, because if you don't interrupt that pregnancy, the baby will likely be born. I mean, your body is naturally doing a process of nurturing that you don't even have to consciously do. When the baby's a newborn, you have to consciously care for the baby. You have to remember to feed the baby. You have to remember to put the baby to sleep. You have to remember to change the baby. So it's harder to care for a newborn in that sense. When you're pregnant, you don't have to remember to feed the baby, to change the baby. The amniotic fluid is doing it on its own. You just have to take care of your body, meaning get good nutrients, get good sleep, take care of yourself. But for some reason, we have just penalized that baby so hard for being an unborn baby. How dare it be an unborn baby that then I can then kill it. So anyways, I'm kind of ranting here, guys. But we've just broken our brains, like as a whole society, on this whole idea of even what it means to be human and to be dependent as a child. Our brains are seriously broken. I'm hopeful that's changing. A lot of people are changing their minds on this stuff. It's a process, but the propaganda has gone so deep into people's brains, into their psyches here. So we'll listen to a little more of this exchange.
Asking you why, and you keep saying just because it's in your body. But why does that
there
child
would
not have
already be
rights?
laws on the books. And currently, there are no laws on the books that say that anything that happens before that birth means that they are not actually live.
That's actually inaccurate. So
No.
even in states like California, there's such a thing. there has been such a thing until recently in the last 2 years as illegal abortions. Are you aware of that? So even in states that are blue states, there are illegal abortions where it says, yes, before birth, this is a person that has some rights and we're going to protect them. And similarly, if you're Scott
that's
Peterson,
an illegal medical
procedure. One other example.
It's about the medical procedure,
another example,
not about the actual
here's
life.
another example.
So
Scott Peterson, he killed his pregnant wife, Lacey, and their unborn son, Connor. Connor, in your view, was just a clump of cells. He wasn't burned yet, but his dad killed him. Should he have been penalized for killing both his wife and the pregnant part of his wife, the baby, the boy, his son, Connor?
No.
So you think Scott Peterson should have got off scot-free for killing his 8-month-old unborn son?
Scott Peterson should have been penalized for killing his live wife.
But not Connor. Connor had no
Connor
rights.
was not alive.
So if
Connor was in her body.
So if I'm a woman,
Connor
so if a
was in
woman's
her body
boyfriend
and was not a human being with rights on this planet.
This
as
is
of
very
yet.
dark because you're saying if a woman is
If it
pregnant
is
and her
not
boyfriend
alive-
slips drugs into her drink to force an abortion on her, she wants to have this
But
baby. He puts drugs in her drink. Would you say that there should be no penalties for that man and what he did to her?
Procedure against the
But
mother's
you just said the baby.
body.
This was so wild to me. It's not an illegal procedure to murder Lacey and murder Lacey's son, but maybe it would be an illegal procedure to give someone abortion drugs without their knowing in their drink. I mean, obviously it doesn't make any sense. This was like one of the craziest. Honestly, I think there were definitely more conversations that were more emotionally intense, but I think this was the craziest argument that was made. Let's just listen to the rest of it.
It's not born yet, so it has no
That is
rights.
against the mother's body, not against that. That child does not have
What if
rights.
it's
It
just a
does
drug
not
designed to
have
kill the
rights.
baby? It's just designed to kill the baby in her womb.
But it's designed to harm the tissue that is in her body because that's her body.
So you're saying
It's
it would
her
have been
body.
wrong. Scott Peterson should have been given penalties for killing Connor,
For harming Lacey.
but not for harming Connor.
For harming Lacey.
So if a man-
So Connor is a part of Lacey, then it's harming Lacey.
So if a man kills his girlfriend's unborn baby, he should
is
not be
harmed-
penalized for
he is
killing the unborn baby, only
harmed-
for
harmed
in
the
some way
mother.
harming her.
What is so crazy about this is they also argue, the argument was that abortion doesn't harm a woman. So they're kind of trying to have it both ways, where it is wrong to do a forced abortion on a woman because it's harming her, but then also abortion doesn't harm women, right? So which is it? Does abortion hurt women or not? And then Connor wasn't alive. Lacey was alive. That's why Connor's death doesn't matter. But then if Connor had died, how could he not have been alive first? Right? Like it doesn't hold. So anyways, this was, this was part of the debate. I actually really appreciated that Jubilee had this 10-minute section at the end where we could actually have a longer conversation without the flags going up, because all of those flags going up in the other conversations made them way abbreviated. There wasn't really the chance to go deep. I'm going to wrap here in a few minutes, guys, and I'll take a look at the chat. But one of the things that also is not included in the Jubilee video, I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, if they're going to use it. We did film a whole other segment. So there's like another, 10, 15 minutes of filming that we did on a whole other claim that I think was the spiciest claim, actually. And so they chose not to include it, which is interesting in the edit. So I don't think I'm allowed to say more. I wonder if they're going to be releasing that in the future. I'm not sure, but I think it would be very cool if they did that. Okay, I'm going to take another look at the chat here. Micah is talking here again. He's saying, so do most people who get abortions feel guilty? If I had to, I wouldn't feel guilt, because I think I'd be saving that child from a life sentence of pain. So again, appreciate Micah being on here. He says he's pro-choice. Thank you for communicating on here. Then Micah says, yes, I will forever carry that guilt. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you exactly what will happen to you after, if you have an abortion, what will happen to you, except that baby is dead, right? What kind of mental health problems you might have, what kind of guilt and shame you might feel. The numbers tell us, the statistics and the studies show us that women who have abortions are up to 7 times more likely to commit suicide. And that was a study from Finland. The Medicaid study in California, it's 150% more likely to commit suicide. So those are pretty rough numbers, right? That research shows that. I don't think someone should not have an abortion just because they're going to have mental health issues later, potentially. I think the reason you choose life for your baby is because it's a human being. and you want to do what's right and loving. And I think in addition to that, anybody who's in a tough situation, so Micah, if you ever know anyone who's in a tough situation, we want to connect them to resources, because the pro-life movement is here to support women. Like, that's half the battle here, guys. And so I'm going to put it in the description, but there's an abortion pill hotline, reversal hotline. So if someone starts taking the abortion pill within 24 hours, it's possible to reverse it. A lot of women don't realize this and they regret abortions. So you guys can write down this number, but it's 1-877-558-0333. This is the abortion pill reversal hotline. So these are two hotlines I'm going to give you that I think are really important for you guys to know. So, so this is the abortion pill reversal hotline, and it's 1-877-558-0333. 1-877-558-0333. This number will connect you immediately to free medical care to help you potentially reverse your abortion pill abortion if you are regretting it, and get you your care. They have successfully reversed thousands of abortions. So everyone should know this number, 1-877-558-0333. And then the other number that I want to give people is the CareNet hotline. So I think this is really, really important, because there is an association of thousands of pregnancy centers. And these centers are designed to help women with free confidential care, not just when they're pregnant, but when they give birth and they have very young children. And I think this is really important for all pro-lifers to know about the care that exists for moms and for babies in need, because the reality is a lot of babies and moms are in need. A lot of babies and moms need help. So I think that's the other thing that everyone should have in their back pocket. There's two associations of pregnancy centers that I really love. One of them is heartbeatinternational.org, and then one of them is carenet.org. These are organizations that have associations of really thousands of pregnancy centers that are designed to help women and babies in need. Again, free confidential support. Here is a hotline. This is the hotline for Los Angeles. I'm going to give the national hotline, because I think that will connect people regardless of where they live. But here's another nurse hotline, 844-440-3462. And that's 844-440-3462. So very important to have these hotlines, and also just check out the amazing work of Pregnancy Resource Center, so that if you know anyone who needs help, they can get that help. We get messages every day at Live Action. I get messages almost daily from women seeking help. Many of them in the United States, some of them are in Europe, and we're able to connect them to local pregnancy centers to give them the support that they need. So everyone should have that in their back pocket. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me for this live. We might do part 2 tomorrow. We've already been going an hour here, lots of clips. The Jubilee debate was like 2 hours long, and they released at least an hour 40 of it so far. So you can go check it out on Jubilee's channel. Thanks everybody for joining me, and thanks for all the support and the love in the comments. And I will maybe be live again here tomorrow, and we'll see you guys then. Thanks for joining.